Okay, imagine this. The highest law, the absolute rule of the land, runs smack into your deepest personal conviction. What do you do?
Yeah.
I mean, if obeying the law means betraying who you are, but staying true could literally get you killed, that's the kind of impossible choice at the heart of this incredible ancient story we're looking at today. Welcome to the deep dive. We're plunging into a really dramatic story. Faith, power, rescue. It's all in chapter 6 of the book of Daniel. Our mission, basically, is to unpack this narrative. Look at the key events, the motivations described in the text, and the twists that make it so powerful. Let's just jump right in.
Okay, so the story kicks off, setting the political scene. You've got King Darius. He's just taken over this huge kingdom. And the text shows him immediately getting organized, setting up structures to manage this vast empire.
Right, and part of that is creating these administrative layers, yeah. The source mentions 120 satraps, like regional governors.
Exactly. Provincial governors spread all across the kingdom. And managing that many people over that much territory, that's inherently risky for a king.
Risks like what? Corruption, losing money, power getting too fragmented.
All of that. So Darius adds another layer. The text says he puts 3 administrators over those 120 satraps for oversight.
Ah, okay. And Daniel, he's one of those top 3 guys, positioned right near the king.
Precisely. The whole idea is the satraps report up to these 3, and the text is super clear about the purpose so that the king might not suffer loss. It's about control, preventing mismanagement.
But Daniel wasn't just one of the 3, was he? The source makes a point about him. Says he so distinguished himself by his exceptional qualities.
Yeah, that's key. He wasn't just doing his job. He was genuinely outstanding. Exceptional skill, maybe character, something that really made him stand out from everyone else, even the other top administrators.
And these exceptional qualities, they get noticed.
Big time. The king notices. So much so, the text says Darius actually planned to promote him again, set him over the entire kingdom.
Wow. That's a huge jump. From top administrator to basically second in command of the whole empire.
It really is. And you see this dynamic, right? A new power structure, someone excelling within it, getting fast-tracked.
It creates opportunity for sure.
But it also creates friction, envy, especially among those other administrators and satraps who suddenly see this guy leapfrogging them.
Yeah, that makes total sense. It gets you thinking, doesn't it? In any structure, ancient or modern, when someone really shines with these exceptional qualities, how does that affect the people around them, particularly those who maybe felt they deserved that promotion?
Exactly. And that tension leads straight into the next part, the conspiracy. Daniel's success, the king's obvious favor, well, it didn't sit well with the others.
The other administrators and the satraps, they become the antagonists here, driven by what? Jealousy? Fear of his power?
Probably a mix of both. Resentment, definitely. So they decide they need to take him down.
And how do they first try to do it? What's their angle?
Well, they go for the obvious thing first. They try to find fault with his work, his job performance as an administrator. The text says they were looking for grounds for charges against Daniel in his conduct of government affairs. Digging for dirt, corruption, negligence, anything.
But they came up empty. Right. The source seems really emphatic about this.
Completely empty. It says they could find no corruption in him because he was trustworthy and neither corrupt nor negligent. Basically, his professional record was spotless.
So his work ethic, his integrity in his job was untouchable.
Which forces them to pivot. They realize, okay, plan A isn't working. The text actually quotes their conclusion. We will never find any basis for charges against this man, Daniel, unless it has something to do with the law of his God.
Whoa. Okay, think about that. They can't get him on his job performance because he's, as the text says, trustworthy. So the only way they see is to target his faith, his identity.
Yeah, it's a shift from performance to identity, isn't it? When you can't find fault in what someone does, you attack who they are or what they believe.
It says a lot about integrity, maybe. That if it's just about following rules, it's one thing. But if it's tied to something deeper, like faith, it's harder to attack directly. So they have to manufacture a conflict.
Precisely. They have to create a situation where his religious practice becomes a crime, which leads them to hatching this plan for a deceptive decree.
And the source mentions they go as a group to the king. That feels calculated.
Oh, definitely. Presents a united front, makes their proposal seem like a consensus, gives it more weight. And they start with the flattery, right? Oh, King Darius, live forever. Standard court procedure, but maybe a bit thicker here.
Soften them up before the pitch. And what's the actual proposal?
They suggest the king issue an edict. For the next 30 days, nobody can pray to any god or human except King Darius himself.
30 days. Seems arbitrary, but perfectly timed for their trap.
And the penalty for breaking this temporary law, being thrown into the lion's den.
Brutal. And they add a crucial legal detail, don't they?
Yes, this is the linchpin. They specifically ask the king to put it in writing and invoke the laws of the Medes and Persians, which the text presents as unchangeable, irreversible.
So once it's signed, not even the king can undo it. They're locking him in.
Exactly. They're using the supposed strength and stability of the legal system, its unchangeable nature, as the mechanism for their trap.
And Darius, he buys it. He signs the decree.
He does. The text says, so King Darius put the decree in writing. Maybe flattered, maybe swayed by the apparent unity of his advisors, maybe just not seeing the hidden agenda. Whatever the reason, he signs it into law.
It's a chilling example, isn't it? How easily even powerful leaders can be manipulated, especially when presented with something that sounds like it strengthens their authority or when they're bound by rigid, absolute laws.
Absolutely. And this brings us right to Daniel's response. The text is clear. Now, when Daniel learned that the decree had been published, he knew. He understood the law and the consequences.
So what does he do? Does he panic? Hide? Try to change his routine?
No, none of that. The source describes him going home to his upstairs room, and it specifically mentions his windows opened toward Jerusalem. That detail connects his private act back to his heritage, his identity.
Even in exile. And his actions.
Simple, consistent. 3 times a day, he got down on his knees and prayed, giving thanks to his God.
Giving thanks, even then.
Even then, the text makes sure to include that. It wasn't just asking for help, it was thanksgiving too.
And the crucial part, the text emphasizes he did this.
Just as he had done before, no change, no concession to the decree. He just continued his established practice, his relationship with his God, despite the explicit prohibition and the deadly penalty.
That consistency is powerful. It wasn't a sudden act of defiance because of the law. It was just him continuing to be him. His conviction was rooted in habit, not just reaction.
Right. It speaks volumes about the nature of his faith. It wasn't situational.
So Daniel's praying. Predictably, what are the conspirators doing?
They're watching, waiting. The text says, then these men went as a group and found Daniel praying and asking God for help. They got their evidence.
Exactly what they engineered the law to catch him doing.
So they immediately go back to the king. First, they remind him about the decree he signed, make him confirm its validity.
Locking him in again, verbally.
And the king confirms it. The decree stands in accordance with the laws of the Medes and Persians, which cannot be repealed. He acknowledges he's bound by it.
And then they drop the accusation. How do they phrase it?
Very pointedly. They name Daniel. They identify him as one of the exiles from Judah, a little reminder of his otherness. And then they accuse him. He pays no attention to you, O king, or to the decree. He still prays 3 times a day.
Wow. Pays no attention to you, O king. They frame his religious obedience as personal disloyalty to Darius. Clever and nasty.
It reframes his faithfulness to God as political defiance, weaponizing his identity and his actions.
How does the king react when he hears this, that his trusted Daniel is the one caught?
The source says, when the king heard this, he was greatly distressed. He gets it now. He sees the trap, realizes he's been played, and understands his top administrator is the target.
And he doesn't want Daniel to die, does he?
Not at all. The text says he was determined to rescue Daniel. He spends the whole rest of the day, until sundown, trying desperately to find a loophole, some way to save him.
But the law.
The law was absolute. The conspirators made sure of that. They come back, again as a group, just to remind him. Remember, O king, that according to the law, no decree can be changed.
They hold his feet to the fire. It's a fascinating picture, isn't it? The absolute monarch, trapped by the inflexibility of his own legal system.
It really is. His personal desire, his relationship with Daniel, it counts for nothing against the rigidity of the law they manipulated him into signing.
So, despite his distress, the king is forced to act.
He has no choice under the law he upheld. So the king gave the order, the text says grimly, and they brought Daniel and threw him into the lion's den.
The sentence is carried out. But the king says something to Daniel just before.
Yes, it's remarkable. As Daniel's being taken away, the king says, may your God, whom you serve continually, rescue you.
Think about that. The king who signed the decree forbidding prayer to anyone but himself is now pinning his hopes on Daniel's God. It shows how much Daniel's consistent faith, his serving continually, had impacted Darius.
It really does. And then, to make the situation absolutely final, irreversible by human hands, they seal the den.
Oh.
A stone was brought and placed over the mouth of the den, and the king sealed it with his own signet ring and with the rings of his nobles. It's a public, official act, multiple seals, ensures nobody can interfere so that Daniel's situation might not be changed.
That sealed stone. It's such a symbol of human systems declaring something finished, done, irreversible.
Exactly. It sets the stage perfectly for what happens next. The king, meanwhile, is having a terrible night.
Yeah, the text describes his state.
Says he went back to his palace, spent a night without eating, no entertainment, couldn't sleep, just pure anxiety and distress.
It shows the human cost, right? Even for the king. He's not indifferent. He's tormented by what he was forced to do.
Absolutely. And that torment leads him to rush back to the den at the earliest possible moment.
As soon as it's light.
At the first light of dawn, the text says, he got up and hurried to the lion's den. You can feel the urgency, the desperation.
And when he gets there, he calls out.
Yes, and the description is powerful.
Hmm.
He called out to Daniel in an anguished voice. You hear the pain, the fear, the sliver of hope.
What is the question?
It's the absolute crux of the story. Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve continually, been able to rescue you from the lions?
Again, servant of the living God, acknowledging Daniel's faith. But the question itself, has your God been able? It's full of doubt, isn't it? Hope wrestling with the impossible reality of the lions and the sealed tomb.
Exactly. The tension is at its absolute peak.
And then answered from inside the den.
Incredible. Daniel answered, O king, live forever. Still respectful, even from the pit.
How does he explain it? How did he survive?
He gives credit directly to God. My God sent his angel, and he shut the mouths of the lions. They have not hurt me.
An angel shut the lions' mouths. A direct supernatural intervention described here. And why? Why was he spared?
Daniel gives two reasons, according to the text. First, looking upward, because I was found innocent in his sight, innocent before God.
Meaning his prayer wasn't wrong in God's eyes.
Right. And second, looking outward to the king. Nor have I ever done any wrong before you, O king. Innocent before the human authority, too, in terms of actual treason or corruption.
So his survival is presented as a vindication, proving his innocence both to God and implicitly that the decree itself was unjust in targeting him.
Precisely. The miracle confirms his righteousness in the face of the conspiracy.
The king's reaction must have been immense.
The text says he was overjoyed, immediately orders Daniel to be lifted out.
And when they get him out, what condition is he in?
Critical detail. No wound was found on him. Completely unharmed.
And the text explicitly links this to his faith, doesn't it?
Yes, it says he was safe because he had trusted in his God. A direct causal link presented in the narrative. Trust led to deliverance.
Okay, so Daniel is safe. What happens to the guys who set him up? The accusers.
The narrative shifts very quickly and starkly. At the king's command, those men, the ones who had falsely accused Daniel, are arrested.
And their fate.
They're thrown into the same lion's den.
Just them.
The text includes a harsh element here, along with their wives and children.
Wow, the whole family.
Yes, and the outcome for them is immediate and brutal as described. Before they reached the floor of the den, the lions overpowered them and crushed all their bones.
A complete and horrifying contrast to Daniel's experience.
The story presents it as swift, severe justice. Daniel's trust brings angelic protection. The accuser's malice brings instant destruction by the very means they intended for Daniel.
Okay, so the immediate aftermath is deliverance for Daniel, destruction for the accusers. But the impact doesn't stop there, does it? King Darius does something else.
He does. He issues another decree, a massive one, sent out to all the peoples, nations, and men of every language throughout the land, his entire empire.
And this decree is about?
It's about Daniel's God. The king commands that throughout his realm, people must fear and reverence the God of Daniel.
A pagan emperor commanding reverence for the God of an exile he just condemned to death. That's stunning.
It is, and he explains why. He lists the attributes of Daniel's God based on what he's just witnessed. For he is the living God, and he endures forever. His kingdom will not be destroyed. He rescues and he saves. He performs signs and wonders.
He sounds like a convert almost.
Yeah.
And he connects it directly back to Daniel.
Explicitly. He declares this is the God who has rescued Daniel from the power of the lions. The specific event becomes the basis for this empire-wide proclamation about God's power in nature.
It really underscores the idea that witnessing something extraordinary, something unexplainable, can profoundly shift worldviews, even at the highest levels of power.
Absolutely. It's presented as having a massive ripple effect.
And finally, what about Daniel himself, long term?
The chapter ends with a brief note. So Daniel prospered during the reign of Darius and the reign of Cyrus the Persian.
So he wasn't just saved. He continued to thrive, even under the next major ruler. His faithfulness through the crisis actually solidified his position.
Seems that way according to the text. His ordeal didn't break him. It ultimately led to greater honor and influence and this major proclamation about his God.
So wrapping up this deep dive into Daniel 6, wow, we've seen this intense clash between state law and deeply held faith. We've watched integrity get tested by political conspiracy. We've read this dramatic account of, well, what the text calls divine rescue.
Yeah, and the immediate severe consequences for the accusers as presented in the source, plus the profound impact the whole thing had on King Darius and his official policy.
It really makes you grapple with some big questions, doesn't it? Like, what does that kind of unwavering conviction actually look like in practice? How do you navigate systems where the rules might force you to compromise your core values?
And what power, if any, does that kind of deep trust have when you're facing genuinely impossible odds? The story offers its own powerful answers to that.
Okay, here's something to chew on, a final thought from this. You have Darius, ruler of a massive, diverse empire, making a public declaration. He tells everyone they should fear and reverence Daniel's God. Why? Because of this one miraculous rescue he witnessed. So what kinds of events today, maybe big global things, maybe intensely personal experiences, are actually powerful enough to make people fundamentally rethink their beliefs, or challenge societal norms, or even perhaps influence the laws we live under, something to mull over?